And we're
Hello,
live.
ladies.
Hello, hello.
Hello.
Hey, everybody.
How's everybody tonight?
Doing well.
Yeah.
Good.
Pretty good for a Tuesday.
That's right.
Yep.
We're
You
almost done.
survived to Monday. That's what matters.
That's right.
Exactly.
Well, welcome to Wild Women of Weird. My name is Finley Jones, and I'm here with Hadley Thorne, Morgana Calder, and Crystal. And I can't remember Crystal's last name.
Michelle. Crystal Michelle.
Crystal Michelle. Sorry, Crystal.
Oh, that's okay.
I'm on cold medication, so my brain is not firing on all cylinders tonight.
It happens.
Yeah, I know. So tonight we're going to talk about hoax phone calls, specifically the hoax phone calls that involved a multi-million-dollar lawsuit against McDonald's in 2007, I believe it was. So Netflix has the show Don't Pick Up the Phone airing. It's got three episodes, and it is probably some of the craziest, most insane crap I've ever heard in my life, for lack of a better word. You know, we used to play those games where we would call and do pranks on people, but this takes it to a whole nother depraved level.
This is a sex crime.
Yes.
Absolutely.
100%. Yeah, our prank phone calls were like, do you have Prince Albert in a can?
Exactly. Or is your refrigerator running? You better
Yep.
go flush it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Wow.
You know, and it's amazing, and I do realize it was like when the internet was really a baby, but that I didn't know about this.
I didn't know about it either.
You know,
I did not. I've heard it because, I mean, it's crazy, and I always pay attention to crazy stuff. But I only thought there were like 3 cases. I had no idea.
No. So
There was
was
like hundreds of cases.
it was.
Yes.
It
Hey,
was
Mike.
so.
Hey, Mike.
Hey, Mike. So
Yeah, it's I think something like 103.
yeah, it was over 100.
Yeah.
Across 32 states, and it lasted for about 10 years.
Yeah. That's
And
insane.
I think the case that blew it wide open, though, was Louise Ogborn, and she's the one that is featured in this documentary.
Yeah, she's the one that she successfully sued McDonald's, which they should have paid. They knew what was going on and never said anything to their staff.
Right.
So just a spoiler alert, if you're listening to this, you're going to know what happens because we're going to talk about it.
Oh, well, yeah, sorry. I should have said spoiler alert, I guess. Sorry.
Nah. It's not like we're talking movies. I mean, this really happened. It was all over the news. But it was never discussed in detail. And I guess it was so ridiculous that people wouldn't have believed it.
Yeah. Especially then, because the internet was so new.
Yes.
And you know the crazy thing about this is you did not hear from the parents of these women that were assaulted.
I know.
Yeah. I think they did interview one's brother, right?
Right. Yeah. They were, the girl that was at Taco Bell.
Yeah.
So the backdrop, just if you don't know, the backdrop is a caller would call a fast food restaurant, because Taco Bell and McDonald's, and I think there were Arby's and Wendy's maybe.
And Hardee's and a pizza place.
Yeah. So this man would call the restaurant and ask to speak to the manager and identified himself as a cop. And then he would give a general description of a female. She's got dark hair and she's petite, or, you know, some just very generic description. And the manager would say, oh, yeah, I do have somebody like that works here. I know exactly who you're talking about. The caller would tell her that the employee stole something, and then would have the manager call the employee into the office, where he would take the manager step by step and have the girl strip searched, just one piece of clothing at a time. And then he would have them do jumping jacks while they were nude, completely naked, in the office at a restaurant. So there's the jumping jacks, and then had them bend over. I believe it was Louise Ogborn was bent over the desk, and they had
What he did to her,
he spanked her, he beat her, he made
he
her perform oral sex on him. It was, and the man was on the phone the whole time.
42-year-old man and an 18-year-old girl.
And he
It,
wasn't even the manager.
no,
No, he was
was
her
the
fiance.
Yes.
and she kept coming in or walking by.
Mhm.
And they took her clothes from her too. And I heard like, I think one of the things that like during the trial, McDonald's was trying to say was, well, why didn't she just walk out? Like they totally tried to victim blame. And they were like, why didn't she just walk out? Well, they took her clothes and her car key.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
What was she supposed to do? Walk down the street naked?
Right. And she also talked about the fact that she grew up with a military father. She was taught from a young age that you do not talk back. If an adult tells you to do something, you do it. And it never occurred to her at her age that she could just walk out or say no because a person of authority had told her to do something.
Right.
Yeah. And I think she got to a point where she realized this is wrong, but like she was just so terrified at that point that she was scared to say no.
Right.
So you have that, like by the time she realizes this isn't right, this isn't how this should be working, she's naked, she has no access to her keys or her clothes, and she's terrified for her life at that point.
So the question was posed to me, why would any adult think this was okay? And if you watch the episode, I think it was episode 2, not season, sorry, episode 2, they had a social psychologist, I believe, is what his title was. He spoke about the Milgram, is that right? Do you
Yes.
remember?
Yeah.
The Milgram study, where they would have an actor, a real participant, and then I guess the technician was the third. They would have the real participant sit at a table while the actor was on the other side hooked up to quote unquote an electroshock therapy, whatever, electroshock machine or whatever. Sorry, I don't know my words tonight. English is hard. Anyway, they would have the actor answer questions, and if he got the answer wrong, then the participant had to flip the switch to shock the actor. Well, there were no actual electric shocks happening, but the actors were purposely getting answers wrong so that they would have to increase the voltage of the shock. And even though you could see, like they did one guy that was the actual participant, he did not want to flip that switch. You could tell that he just had this war raging inside of him, but he was told this is part of this. This is part of the study, and this is what y'all agreed to, and you did. So he just did it. And they were saying that 65%, I think that's the right statistic.
Somewhere right around there, yeah.
Yeah, that 65% of people will do it even though they know in their heart of hearts that it is wrong because they don't want to buck authority.
And you know, I do get that. I understand, you know, the research that they did on it and everything, but I guess maybe just that parent in me just goes, how could any adult look at a child? I mean, because a couple of cases, somebody else came in and got on the phone and he's like, do this. And they're like, oh, hell no, I'm not doing this. You know, no, I'm not doing this.
That happened in the McDonald's case.
Yes. Yeah, that's the janitor that came in and said.
And by the way, I'm sorry, just while I'm thinking about it, there were actually several young male victims also.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
And like I understand, like, because another study, like psychological study that I thought about, which is obviously not as closely aligned as the one with the electroshocks, but I think it was Princeton that did, where they had like the prisoners and the
the guards.
and the guards, and like they just saw how that, like, it kind of reminded, like, I thought there were some similarities there too, about like you're in this authority position, and you know the guards were told to act a certain way, like how guards do or whatever, and then just in the situation it kind of exacerbates it. But at the same time, it's like I understand it to an extent, to maybe the strip search, even though I know that I personally would super question that. I wouldn't feel comfortable doing that. I'd be like, no, I'm not doing it. But at the same time, I've never been in that situation, so who knows? I could be wrong about myself.
So here's my take on that. We are in a woke society, if you want to use that word. I'm not a fan, but whatever. Woke society. And our kids know now your body's your body. You don't have to let anybody touch it. You don't have to but we did not do that back in the day.
No.
We did what we were told because that's how we were raised. And so I can see how the victims of this, the sexually assaulted victims, I can see how they would do what they were told. But the adults,
and I can understand to a certain extent, like kind of like just because of this study, like I'm like, okay, that makes sense to a certain extent for the manager to be like, okay, well, this cop is telling me to do this. But when it gets to the point where you're like touching them, having them perform oral sex, like, no, there has to be a point where your brain clicks and says, this person isn't who they say they are, because what does this have to do with a theft?
right.
Well, in the McDonald's case, the police station was less than a mile from McDonald's. And they were saying, oh, well, we'll be there shortly. Well, WTF, I mean, we can wait till you get here.
Exactly.
That's what I didn't understand. I mean, I get that on some level that man was exposed. You know, because regardless of whether or not he would have done it without someone asking him to do it, he readily spanked that little girl. He readily, you know, let her kiss him. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Oh,
you know, I mean, to see if she'd been drinking, because she might have $50. $50, guys. I mean,
I'm sorry, you can tell if somebody's been drinking without sticking your tongue in their mouth.
Yeah.
I mean, 42-year-old man, 18-year-old girl. And it's all over $50. You know what? Jail isn't worth $50 for me.
Right. And here's the other thing about that particular case is, okay, then, you know, the guy had her perform oral sex. What was the purpose of that? You know, what was that going to show them? You know, because they never specified exactly what the you know, catalyst was on that one, you know, because before it was like, let them do jumping jacks and see if something falls out, or kiss her because we can tell, you know, if she's been drinking. But what was the oral sex? And this, like I say, 42-year-old man didn't have enough. No, because he was a predator deep down, whether he wanted to admit it to himself or not.
Yeah, that's just completely predatory behavior.
And the other thing that I think is important to point out is that I think that the McDonald's incident went a lot further because of this. And, you know, I mean, this was the perfect scenario for the guy on the phone.
Yeah,
exactly.
You know, this is, I mean, and that's what I kept thinking is this is exactly what he was looking for. You know, other people probably started balking and they're like, well, I don't know about this. This kind of is getting weird. And this guy was like, my girlfriend called me and this is so stupid. This must be, you know, like my birthday present or, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
But I mean, he didn't even work there. And the great thing that, I mean, it's not great, but I mean, as a weirdo, I like to think about this is, you know, he asked her, what's a man you trust? What's a man who you trust explicitly? Let's, you know, get him. And it's almost like did he know? You know, I mean, it just seems, I mean, in some ways, it kind of seems like a setup because it was exposing this behavior.
Oh, yeah. And I 100% agree with what Mike's saying. Like,
Exactly.
I've been in, like, I've never managed a fast food restaurant, but I've been in management and leadership positions, and there's no way that I would ever, as somebody in a position of authority, trust that somebody's saying that they're a cop over the phone and that I need to make some subordinate strip. Like, absolutely no way.
You know, I won't stop in a secluded area if blue lights go on behind me. I will drive until I get to a store and then show me that badge.
Yep.
Or I will call in. I am not stopping. So why would I trust somebody on the phone?
Well, and exactly. I mean, that's the whole. And I want to say, like in the McDonald's scenario, and I'm sure with the others, it was not just the cop, but supposedly McDonald's management was there too, and they gave the go ahead.
Yeah, but they never heard. If somebody said that, oh, you have the owner of this franchise on the phone, let me talk to them.
Exactly.
Why didn't anybody ask that?
Well, and that, which manager, which franchise owner? Because this guy's from Florida, he's not going to know the franchise owner's name back then because, like I said, the internet was just not readily available.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there were so many things that were just totally not done that could have prevented all of it.
And one of the things, I think it was the one at the pizza place, where he was talking about with the jumping jacks, they wanted to make her sweat because if she had money on her, her sweat would turn green.
Yeah.
Do you know how many girls in their 20s would be walking around with green cleavage if that was true? Like, I mean, come on. That's no.
Mike's got another good comment.
Yes.
Yep, exactly.
That's exactly.
And that's exactly what you should do. You don't. Yeah.
Well, that's because Mike's a good guy. He's not a sexual predator, but I mean, I can get that some of these people were undereducated. They just didn't have the worldliness to say, but because I've tried to put myself back at 17, 18 years old, what would I have done? And it's like, I mean, the first thing I would have said is get my father.
Yeah. See, that's,
I think the first thing I would have said would have been, if the cops want to strip search me, they can come here. I would ask for the cops. And maybe it's just because, like, I've known a lot of cops in my life. Like, my uncle was an officer. I used to babysit for some police officers that were really good friends of the family. And, like, for me, as a 17-year-old in suburban community white girl, the cops were a safe thing to me, especially back in the late 90s. Now, I don't want to go into all that, but just as my personal experience for me, I'd be like, if a cop actually shows up, then I can trust it. But I'm not just stripping in front of my manager.
Well, they gave her the choice. They said you can either go to the police station or you can be stripped. Not Louise, not at McDonald's. This was the Taco Bell incident. You can go to the police station or you can strip search here.
Yeah,
and
I would have
chose the office.
Hey, Landis.
Yeah, and I do realize that, and I mean, different people with different experiences are going to choose different options.
Right.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Well, my option would have been number one. Where's my? I get a phone call and an attorney. I've seen some Law and Order.
Right. Exactly. Well,
So-
and that's something too that I feel like, I'm the same way. The first thing I'd have done was that I need my dad because, if, as long as he tells me to do this, then I can do this. But, it blows my mind, that the adults, now there are some cases, and this is not by any means saying this is okay, but there are some cases where you've got managers that are 19, 20, 21 years old. You could see doing something stupid, because the person on the phone told them to. But grown people should know better.
People
Well,
in their 40s should never have even gotten as, like, they just should have said no. They
Yeah.
should have known. I totally agree.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Exactly. Because like I said, just you're the adult. There are certain behaviors, and like, some of these people were parents. How would you feel if someone in your position did this to your child?
Right.
well, you don't touch somebody without their permission.
Right.
And I guess, it's that they consented, but at the same time, I mean, that's it. What I would be thinking as a manager is that I don't have the right to put hands on somebody.
Mhm.
This is
Well,
not
they
my
used that
job.
under
This is
duress.
yeah.
Like,
Right.
it was not enthusiastic consent. It was, I'm going to get arrested or lose my job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because the one girl actually said that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That there was one girl that actually said that. But in this is just my opinion. I realize at 18 you're legally grown, but at 18 you cannot knowingly consent to a 42-year-old man. You have
Mm-mm.
no
I
idea
would
what the
agree.
ramifications are.
Right. And I think Louise Ogborn was 17 when this happened. I think she was 18 when she won the lawsuit.
You may be right. You may be, but yeah, because it does seem like she was underage.
Yeah.
But
Um,
I know how I had a child at 18 and I was stupid as a box of rocks. I mean, you don't have your brain capacity at 18.
You don't. Your
Yeah.
brain isn't fully developed until you're like 24.
Mm-hmm.
mhm.
So I mean, it's just it is a shame. And but going back to the bigger issue here is why didn't the franchises let their employees know this was happening?
Yeah.
So
Right. And McDonald's tried to make some excuse and say that they did, but they had no proof of it. And even in the 90s, before the internet was a thing, there was still fax machines. All it takes, like, yeah, there's different franchise owners, but there's still a corporate office for McDonald's.
right.
All it takes is that one fax from corporate to every franchise owner, and everybody has to say something. Like, they could have stopped it 10 years before Louise got assaulted.
Yep.
But so McDonald's covered up or paid off 6 victims after a hoax like this. There were over 24 calls to McDonald's location, but in all, I mean, that's what 20% of all the calls. If there were 100 calls,
Mm-hmm.
20 to 25% of the calls were all to McDonald's, and
Yeah.
they kept their mouths shut.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably why he kept calling back.
Mm-hmm. And these were not short phone calls. These calls lasted from 2 hours to 4 hours or 5 hours. They were hours long. These girls and some of the young men, sorry, I forgot about the men.
It's all right.
They stood there nude for the majority of that time.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Being humiliated. I mean,
Right. And that
so
in itself is just devastating to a young person. That's when they're at their most vulnerable, is when they do not have any clothes on and they do not have a way to cover themselves.
I'm gonna agree with Ash here.
Yes,
100%.
absolutely.
Yeah. It's like, don't be polite.
That's right.
Exactly.
Well, and
Like, you don't need to be polite.
I'm
Mhm.
glad that the younger generation don't seem to be as hung up on being polite as our generation was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the thing was, I was, to a degree, I mean, I was raised that way also, but thankfully I was lucky in the sense that I knew all I had to do was go to my dad and I could tell him and he would intervene, take care of it, whatever, when I was younger.
Mm-hmm.
But not everybody had that. Most teenagers don't feel like they can talk to their parents, because at that point in time, I mean, my daughter, I don't know that she'd have come to me because she hated me when she was a teenager. I mean, I just, like I said, I was close to my dad. So I know I could have gone to him. But like I said, there are just so many scenarios where they just don't feel like there's anybody they can talk to. And when you've got an authority figure, your manager, and an actual police officer who you've been told is the person you go to when something is wrong, telling you to do these things. How do you react, when you're a kid?
So the managers in the McDonald's case, Donna Summers, I'll never forget her name. As
I know, right?
So Donna Summers was the manager that answered the phone and started the strip search. She was on probation for a year, but I think it was the one of the detectives that worked on that case that knew Louise because they were next door neighbors.
Yep.
I believe it was him that said her life was pretty much ruined. And she said it was ruined too when she was on the stand. He said she lost her job with McDonald's. Her face was plastered all over and it was. She had to have been culpable in some way because she let it happen.
But did they do anything to the fiance?
The fiance went to jail for 5 years.
Did he? Yeah. Okay, I guess I must have missed that.
He did.
I thought that he had gone to jail, but I couldn't remember for sure.
Yeah, and the office did have cameras. That's why they know exactly. They couldn't hear, but they could see everything that went on during 4 hours.
Video. They played all 3 hours of that assault in the courtroom.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I was just going to say, they said that, when he spanked her so hard you could see the red welts.
Yeah, that's not doing something because you're being forced to. That's you're getting some pleasure out of it if you're spanking her that hard.
And I'm going to go back and I'm going to say this. Where was the $50 effing? Obviously it didn't fall out of anywhere. She did jumping jacks. She did everything she was asked to do and still no $50. So we're going to continue to assault this kid.
Right.
Well, and then I think, was it the girl that got assaulted at Taco Bell? Her manager went on trial as well, right?
Yeah, I think the sodomy.
Yes.
No, I don't think so.
He cavity searched her.
Maybe.
And but I think she dropped the charges because I think they kind of scared her out of it.
Okay, that's not the one I'm thinking of then, because there was another one where he actually did go on trial.
Oh, you're talking about that older gentleman. He was
I think his was one. It didn't go as far. Maybe it's the pizza place. It didn't go as far because the cook walked in and stopped everything. And I don't think he would have gone as far as some of the others. But they were just they had the video of that as well. And one of the things that he said, because they asked, why didn't you turn off the video camera? And he was like, well, I wanted to keep the video camera on because I wanted it to show that I was only doing what I was being told. But I think maybe that one might have had audio.
Was that the guy that he said that after it was all over, he just had to go home? He was just so...
Yes.
Ashamed,
yeah.
He was so ashamed of what he had done. And, he definitely went further than he should have, but he didn't go as far as some of the others. And, I do think that he at least showed actual remorse. And I'm not sure that Donna Summers or her fiance really did. She showed remorse because she lost her job.
Right. She showed remorse on the stand. She was crying on the stand.
Well, wouldn't you be? Come on. But she walked in, and that little girl was there naked, and walked by her and just acted like she didn't even see her because she just couldn't. Because her, this great man she knew. I'm using air quotes that no one can see.
I heard it in the voice.
That, he's taking care of business. Well, yeah, he was taking care of business. Sicko.
So Mike said that he didn't understand how a manager could be absent from the floor for that long.
Oh, yeah.
He knew she had to go back on the floor. That's why she called her fiance to come in so she could go back to managing the restaurant while the girl continued
to That's it. Call a man you can trust to keep her in there until we can get there.
And so they'd already been on the phone for an hour at that point. I'm like, no, I'm sorry. To me, that's where she loses any chance that
Right.
she had of saying, oh, I was just doing what I was told. Okay, this cop said they were on their way, this cop, and an hour later, they're like, oh, go get somebody, call somebody to come in that's not even there so you can go back to work while we continue doing this for multiple hours. Like, the moment she called her fiance, like, her guilt to me just shot up.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
And Landa, go ahead,
all
Finley.
right, Morgana. Landa, these people were forced into the position, the victims, and I guess just maybe a little bit these managers and the fiance and all these extras were forced into the positions. But I think at some point they just did it because they wanted to do it. But these young people were accused of stealing, which is what instigated the strip search by the fake cop on the phone to begin with.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And just absolutely floors me that they eventually caught the guy and went to court,
Mm-hmm.
and he got off because he wasn't physically there.
Yeah. That made me so angry. They're like, well, it's not really, he didn't really sexually assault anybody because he was on the phone.
I think
Mhm.
Geraldo Rivera called it essentially long distance rape.
Yes.
What he called
Yes.
That's exactly
Well,
what it was.
I think that this, and this is my conspiracy, okay?
it.
Put on your tinfoil hats because it's going to take me a minute. But I think this guy was someone. Maybe he worked for the CIA. We should ask Scott Baker. But he's someone who had some ability or talent, and I think that he might have been sitting there teaching people how to manipulate folks.
Well, wasn't he at the very least like a corrections officer?
Yes.
Yeah, the one that they arrested was. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, the guy they arrested was a corrections officer, and he wanted to be a cop, but he hadn't. What is with guys that are like, oh, they're not letting me into the police force, I'm going to go do something absolutely horrible?
Because, well,
Like,
I mean, in all honesty, because that's kind of what you get with the police. You either get the great people who are really out there and it's in their heart and soul and what they're made of and they're great cops, or you have people who are power hungry.
Mhm.
yeah,
And I mean, so the ones who wash out, you know,
Yeah.
Right.
yeah, and if they're just the power hungry ones, they're going to try to find power someplace else. Yeah.
And sometimes I wonder about those people that want to be cops and can't make it, so they go to crime. I just wonder sometimes if they don't have a hero complex. Let me see how far I can push this before I step in and save the day, kind of thing.
mm-hmm.
Not in this case, obviously. But
Yeah.
what's amazing to me, not amazing, what's ironic to me is that all of these calls stopped after they arrested David Stewart and put him on trial.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I did see where somebody suggested that there might have been another incident in 2007, but I did not read up on that all the way, so I don't know if that's true.
But you know,
Well, the
having-
80s were a different time.
they were. They were. But you know, I don't necessarily discount your rabbit hole, because it could just as easily have been, if that's what someone was doing, that they find somebody that they can blame it on, and even though he gets off, he still looks guilty as hell.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah, the circumstantial evidence was massive.
yes,
And I don't know how they did it.
but that's the perfect way to end it. You know, if you're doing something like that, is okay, they've blamed somebody, he looks guilty as hell, we're going to stop now while we're ahead.
We're going to Pelican brief him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there you
Yeah.
go. Exactly.
I did a search to see if he was still around, if he was still in Florida where he was at the time, and he keeps out of the limelight. He does not want his face anywhere.
Oh,
So
I mean,
nobody's
why
sure.
would he after that? I wouldn't want
Right.
my face, because that's what everybody's going to know you for, whether you want them to or not. And I mean, even if he wasn't the person that did that, like you said, like the circumstantial evidence there was a lot of it.
So the phone calls themselves were made from payphones.
Mm-hmm.
And they were made from payphones using prepaid phone cards.
Yes.
And so the way they caught David Stewart is that they were able to trace where the card was bought, and then they found him on videotape entering not McDonald's, entering Walmart, and then they saw him at the cash register, and they saw the cashier scanning these phone cards. David Stewart said he never ever used a phone card. He didn't do it, whatever, but they found a phone card in his belongings.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't they find a few different ones in his
Yes,
stuff?
I think so. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. And hang on. I lost that thought. It'll come back to me though.
Well, and I'm gonna segue over to Landa for a minute, because she's saying she would have fought like hell. I think that those people, they just didn't make the count on the thing, because there were so many calls. There
There
was
were
over
a lot of failed calls.
Yeah, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
for probably every 3 that were successful, there's probably one that somebody was like, "What? I'm not doing that," and hung up on them. This is a crank call. Click.
Right. Yeah.
Which probably would have been us,
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the cops said, "We don't have any idea." Not the cop; it was that podcaster. Said we don't have any idea how many calls weren't reported.
Yeah.
We know of the hundreds or the over 100, but we don't know outside of that how many calls were made. But I would be willing to bet he was right.
Well, yeah.
Oh, I got that.
A lot of the ones that didn't succeed weren't reported, or ones where the victim was too scared to report it, and the manager just had a moment of oh my gosh, what did I do? And the victim didn't report it. Yeah.
What I don't understand is if 103 got reported, and from the way they made it sound, the majority of the ones that got reported, they followed through to a certain degree.
Mm-hmm.
They did what they were told on the phone as the manager. Because one of them said they even pulled in a patron that matched the description. And there are those quotes again. But it's, you didn't hear of any parents going to jail for trying to kill a manager for touching their child or strip searching their child or anything else. And I know how I would be as a parent if someone touched my child.
Yeah.
That would be no question. Yes, I'm willing to go to jail for that.
But we know McDonald's paid off multiple people. I'm sure some of the other companies did too.
Probably.
Well,
the Taco Bell girl didn't, because they were going to victim shame her.
Yes.
And she refused to tell what happened to her in front of a courtroom full of people.
And it's so ridiculous. I'm not surprised by it at all, because a lot of sexual assault victims, the exact same thing happens to them, where they don't end up testifying. Even, they might report it, but they don't end up testifying, and their case goes nowhere because not the prosecution, but the defense has already told them exactly what they're going to do to victim shame them and try to make them look like they're the perpetrator of their own assault. And that's a lot to go through.
Well, that one case where the girl was passed out behind some bushes and the kid, raped her.
Oh, and Brock Turner?
Yes. The judge gave him 3 months because he's been through enough. Why would you report, if that's the kind of thing that's being handed out?
That case makes me so mad.
I know, yeah.
Oh, that case makes me so mad every time it comes up. No, he was sentenced to 6 months in jail and spent 3 months there.
Yeah.
Because 20 minutes of a bad decision that ruined a young woman's life.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
I had food that was still rotting in my fridge from when he went into jail by the time he came out.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so like I said, and that's the thing that gets me too, because like I said, I remember there being one incident, that they were talking about where a young man, his manager, and they didn't say whether his manager was a male or a female. Same thing, groping and checking and all of this stuff, and it was all a power trip. I mean, it was all a power trip because this guy, like I said, was telling these people step by step by step, do this now. Okay, do it slow. Okay, that should have been a red flag there. Oh, you're going too fast. Don't tell them to take all their clothes off. Do it one piece at a time. Okay, come on, people. I just
wonder if anybody ever walked by any of the payphones and heard some of this stuff. Like, what would you do if you were walking by a payphone and you heard somebody say, I want you to test if she has alcohol on her breath. Stick your tongue down her mouth. If I was walking by a payphone and heard that, I would pause and I would like stop and listen. I honestly would, because I'd be like, that's not something you hear. And a lot of payphones, especially in America, are open air or were open air. Like they weren't in a booth. So like I would have stopped and possibly, I don't know if I would have reported it, but I would have remembered it to the point that once I heard the news, I would have gone to the cops.
Right.
I mean, like, I heard this.
Yeah.
Well, that's a whole nother thing right there is a good point is, I mean, you would think that someone might report the suspicious weirdo that is, excuse my, this is weird with a W-I,
Yeah.
that's standing in the phone booth for 4 hours.
Yeah.
Right.
Probably making some kind of weird gesture with his hand in his pocket.
I wondered about that too. Because like I said, payphones are pretty public.
Mm-hmm.
And
they're public and they're gross. Nobody wants to spend 4 hours on a payphone.
Right.
Like, that's not normal.
I'm curious as to what this caller's motivation was. Was it simply power? Because if he was standing at a payphone, he obviously was not getting off on the call.
I feel like he probably went home to do that. I definitely feel like he got some satisfaction out of it that he saved.
I'm telling y'all, I think this was probably some type of experiment that that dude was just the fall guy for, because there's just it's enough to do a study. You had over 100 people in your experiment,
right?
And it's like a social experiment
you could ever publish.
But
I mean, the government does weird stuff all the time that they don't talk about. But
that's right. That's exactly right. And yes, you're right about that, Hadley, because like I said, of all the calls that probably didn't get reported, the ones that hung up, you're keeping a tally. Okay, this many I got hung up on. This many this happened. This many this happened. Just the different levels of how far people were willing to go, the depravity, of a person taking someone's word over the phone.
Yeah, I just, like I said, my mind takes it somewhere else, and that's where I go with it. Is it could be a National Lampoon's type of college, class that someone's done. This is the study that they're doing. It could be, like I said, just when you have a bunch of people sitting around, and it could be some type of psyops experiment. Or
did you ever see the movie with Sandra Bullock called Murder by Numbers?
No.
There were
I saw that one.
Ryan Gosling, when he was really young, played in it. And him and another kid decided they were totally different social circles, not friends or anything else, but they decided that they were going to commit the perfect murder and not get caught. And they came close, but it was something like that, that two people decided, okay, we're going to do this and see what happens. Something as simple as that, just a couple of people or even Eddie Murphy, Trading Places. They have a $1 bet over,
Yeah.
So, like I said, because there are some really sick people in this world.
I have nothing but my theories. I have nothing to support. I have nothing to support my tinfoil hat theories. But there y'all
No,
go.
but like I said, they're not that far fetched, though.
No, they're not.
And yes, Mike Lewis, my parents had a wall phone that was right by the front door, and I could walk halfway around our house with the cord.
Yeah, we had that with like our wall phones, but I don't know. Personally, I don't remember payphones with long cords, but that's just
not
me.
that long. I don't.
Yeah.
But like I said, if you got close enough to it, I mean, you could probably sit in your car.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure. Because there definitely are some. Like I do remember the ones at the edges of parking lots and like in weird places, and if they had a cord that was just long enough. Yeah.
Yep. And you could always just use that. Oh well, I'm talking to my mom, or I'm talking to my wife. She's
for
out of
4
town.
hours.
Yeah.
For 4 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's just suspicious.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it definitely is. You would think that it would draw attention, especially if all of it was happening. Where was it? Not Fort Walton, but Panama City. Yeah. I realize it's a larger town than what I grew up in, but you would think that if you start seeing the same guy on the phone for hours on end on a regular basis, that it would draw attention.
Yeah.
And another thing that would support your theory, Hadley, is David Stewart was in Panama City, but these calls happened in 32 states. And you had your phone book, but you had your phone book for your local area. You didn't have it for states across the United States.
That's right. And
you didn't have all the ability to go online and Google phone numbers.
One of the things I used a lot though when the internet was like young, and I was on this student newspaper, is the Yellow Book was it was online and you could look up numbers anywhere. So even early days of internet, that finding a phone book for a certain area online was super simple.
Okay.
Yeah. Because I was thinking 411, because that's how we used to get information, get phone numbers. Yeah. But to call 411 for out of state was like $3, and you didn't do that.
Because you can. Yeah, maybe not Google, but the phone book was online, and all you had to do was put in city, state, and what you wanted to find.
So that's really weird too, though. I mean, who's ever heard of Mount Washington, Kentucky? We've got friends in Kentucky, and when I said that, they're like, where is that? And they grew up in Kentucky, so that's a pretty random place.
Yeah. Oh, I definitely agree with that. And I mean, I'm just shooting out information I know.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I don't know like how he found these places, or maybe it was multiple people. There's, because it is interesting, because it's just because a lot of the places were small towns.
Yep.
So
you would almost think this was to be a truck driver. Someone that had been to these places and for some reason kind of pinpointed them.
Yeah, like an
overroad. Yeah, other than just random. But again, going back to if this is a social experiment, what gives you a better control group? It's completely random. They're giving you a nondescript because, I mean, what is, I mean, were they saying it was a black girl, or were they saying it was a white girl? He gave a very nondescript. I'm looking for a,
short girl brunette that's got dark brown hair and petite.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's probably going to be it was, it's very nondescript, very common, especially at fast food places. I'm looking for a young, short, petite brunette. You'll probably find one of those in almost every fast food place.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I said, and that's how they ended up with a patron at one of them. Somebody stole a purse. Do you have somebody working there that looks like this? No, but I've got someone out there eating. Then that's probably the person. Go get her and take her back.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as in that position, it would have been way, way worse than if I had been a child working there, because you're not going to drag me back to an office in a place I'm eating at.
Oh yeah, I would have fought that. Even as a teenager, I would have fought that. I would have been like, "What are you doing? No."
Exactly. So
Bad
it's
touch. Bad touch.
yes, exactly.
Stranger danger.
Well, like I said, I'm going to go back and say, I appreciate the Netflix drama, and I really just had no idea that it was this widespread. And I'm going to stand by my crazy conspiracy that it was a social experiment done by a psyops group.
I would never have thought of that.
Me either.
And what's so scary is that it's a plausible theory. That's what's so scary.
Yeah.
And also scary is that these adults were so easily manipulated into sexually assaulting their employees.
Well, it's like I told you, it's like they just wanted to see how far people would go. And that's why I started thinking it sounds like an experiment, and that they've set up these parameters,
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I like I said, I don't know. I still, as an adult, just I cannot fathom doing stuff like that. Like I said, yeah, we'd have been the ones that hung up, because there's no way in hell. If you're a cop, I will see you when you get here.
But I'd be very interested to see the map of these places, because were they looking for places where it was predominantly people that were undereducated?
Yeah.
Probably.
Because that would fit into, again, a social experiment. I'm sorry.
And maybe a lot of people that immediately hung up and never reported anything could have been from like I don't want to say bigger cities, because that's not right, but like more educated areas, like cities where there's like more colleges or things like that, where you just have like better educated people than like a place that's like 30 miles from the closest college or whatever.
Yeah. Well, sadly, there are some states that, as a general rule, are less educated. I know this because I live in one, and it, you do have a lot of that. You have a lot of people that never finish high school, that will work at McDonald's from the time they're in high school until, their grandparents and everything, and I'm in no way criticizing working at McDonald's.
No, not at all.
But like I said, education does matter when it comes to career. So, of course, if you've got, like I say, a small town, we got our first McDonald's when I was 15. It was huge. That was like, up until then we had a KFC and a Sonic, so McDonald's was big news in our town.
Well, and where I want to see the map. I want to see like a copy of the map of where all the people were, because again, just something you think we would have heard of if someone called in Mississippi.
Yeah, because nobody can keep their mouth shut.
Yep.
Yes, Ash, you are very right. It's a sad truth.
So, and it's not, and it's definitely not placing blame on these people at all, because education, you don't have to have like a college education to be successful or to, like Mariana said, like there's absolutely nothing wrong with working at McDonald's until you retire. Like it's just, it is easier to prey on people that are less educated and more downtrodden, because they're so used to just doing what they're being told, because that's the only way they can get by.
Yes.
Well, and the more educated areas, and when I say undereducated, I'm talking about people, where you have a large dropout Right.
Yeah.
Where you have a lot of people who aren't even getting high school degrees. When you're getting to those areas, you're getting to people who aren't big question askers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the people who ask questions tend to be more educated, and that's not a judgment. It's just because we have more exposure to asking questions. The reason why I'm going to go back to my comment about I've watched Law and Order. I
Mm-hmm.
watched me some Law and Order, and I know my rights.
Right.
You know, it doesn't matter. You know about whether or not I've got a degree or not. I'm going to say I've watched enough episodes of Law and Order. People, you know, that have been watching those episodes of Law and Order, they're going to have questions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
You know?
there's different ways to be educated. And Londa makes a good point too. Like there are the poor families that, you know, like just because they're poor, like they have the street smarts, they've been through it, they've learned by experience. And so they're going to see through it too, because they've had that education. And like I think that's kind of more what I was trying to say without being able to figure out what I was trying to say is like, you don't have to go to college. You don't have to even necessarily finish high school. You can still have an education of some sort. It doesn't have to be a formal education to be educated in one way or another.
Right.
Common sense is not common, Ash, at all.
Mm-mm.
Sadly.
Yeah, it's really not.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yes.
this was one of those cases that just blew my mind. I kind of like David Koresh and Jim Jones, and the
Yeah.
way that they were able to manipulate people and to get them to do what they wanted them to do, just it is just mind blowing to me. It's
Mhm.
Well, and
earth-shattering.
that's what I'm saying. I can see this being a reason that people were studying it, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
I mean, like I said, you know, it's not that far fetched. I mean, it makes sense,
Yeah.
you know, because like I said, just the timing of everything stopping and all that, it makes sense that could definitely be a thing,
mhm.
you know.
Well,
So
the cause have stopped, as far as we know.
mhm.
I think
This-
people
this-
today are. I think people today. I'm reading Mike and Landa's comments about the rich Restucci warning.
I'm
But I
I
think
love it.
what I was saying is I think that young people today are more aware of what is theirs to protect, and that they can stand up for themselves and they can buck that authority if they know that it's wrong.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Um, and I think where we were taught when we were young to obey and do, we didn't fight back. We just
Yeah.
dealt with it and went on about our ways. I did not talk to my parents about stuff like that growing up. My kids tell me pretty much everything, whether I want to know it or not.
Yeah.
But it's different. I guess it's just the way that, and not even the way you were raised, because my parents were very loving and they took care of us and they did their best to protect us.
Mhm.
So we
Oh
do
yeah,
the same thing for our kids, but it's different social settings, I guess. I don't know what the right wording there is.
well,
It's different social settings, and I think like there's society's gone through changes and has realized to some extent what a huge issue there is with children getting sexually assaulted, and a lot of that being because kids have always been taught if a grown-up tells you to do something, you do it. And now we're changing that, and we're teaching kids like somebody has to have your permission to touch your body. I know a lot of people are campaigning, and I think this is great, like teach kids their actual words for private parts, so that if a kid goes to their teacher and says, Uncle Joey touched my cookie,
Mm-hmm.
The teacher knows what they're saying. Like, and I just think like we're realizing that to protect our children, we have to educate them.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that that's changed a lot of the stuff going on with situations like this, and today's teens wouldn't be as susceptible. Plus, I mean, just the internet and social media being what it is today is going to help that as well too. How many teens are out there watching, you know, this documentary? They would never fall for something like that after watching it.
And I don't think anybody could get away with it now.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
But I had someone ask me one day, I don't remember this happening. Okay, it's so messed up. But some girl got caught in her backyard having sex with her dog.
Ew.
Right?
That's
And
horrible.
I know.
Poor
And
puppy.
I know, right? And the girl's like, this stuff didn't happen when we were younger. I'm like, no, we did not know about it when we were young. We did not have the exposure, that our children have.
Yeah.
So you have to protect them from a lot of stuff now, that we didn't have access to. I mean, if you found your parents' stash of Playboy, it was a huge thing,
Right.
Now, some of the channels that they get, it's crazy. So.
And sadly, you don't even have to go to those channels. You can just watch primetime TV.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I agree with Mike. Our kids were definitely exposed to a whole lot more than we were.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because
I'm still not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
No, I agree.
I feel like just like anything, it's both. Because in some ways it can protect them, in some ways it exposes them to more than they should be exposed to at certain ages.
Yeah.
So
my husband picks at me. He tells me I was sheltered as a child. And I'm like, you say that like it's a bad thing. My dad did tell me, if somebody ever touches you, you come tell me and I will deal with it. But I'm okay that I was sheltered growing up,
Well, I mean, and I'll say this, I've had some crappy shit happen to me, but it wasn't because my dad let it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And there's a lot of times when y'all will hear me say, my dad's name's Larry, that oh hell no, Larry Bradley would have stopped that shit.
Exactly.
It's like these kids who just decided they weren't going to school. Oh hell no, my dad would have taken me every day.
Look, I in high school went through a stage of cutting class until my father told me, the next time you get caught, I will take off work and I will go to school with you and sit in every class you have until you learn that you're supposed to be in school. He goes, and I have the time built up. Do you know that was the last time I cut class? Because I knew he'd do that shit. Yeah. So,
we had 90-minute class periods. So I had a few teachers that I knew I could show up and be like, I'm working on an assignment for another class. Can I go to the library? And they'd give me a library pass and I'd go somewhere else. So I never got caught by my parents doing that, but
oh yeah. I like I said, I've done that in school, but no, I used to like cut class and go to the lake, stuff like that.
Yeah, we usually didn't I grew up in the desert. We didn't have any lakes. So we would just usually go somewhere and chill out for an hour and a half, come back.
Yeah.
Just have a break in the middle of the day.
Yeah.
Well, Finley, this was a good pick. This has been a really interesting conversation.
Yeah.
It was one of the weird ones for sure.
And it was
weird.
A hard watch, just knowing what these girls and boys went through. It was a very hard watch, but it was a
very
good one.
and very infuriating.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So mad. I was so mad at all those managers that how could you not realize the moment it went beyond, the moment a strip search is taking more than 5 minutes, in my opinion, it should be in and out of your clothes.
Anytime a cop on the phone calls you and tells you to ask
I
your
mean that
17
too.
to get your 17-year-old
Yeah.
clerk to do naked jumping jacks, it's a pass.
It's
Yeah.
right.
Anytime a cop's asking you to do a strip search over the phone, it's a huge no.
It's a
But
trap.
trying to give them some leeway because of knowing like the different studies and that people do what they're told, there needs to be a point where it clicks that no, something's not right about this. And then yeah. And beyond, if it's not a quick let's see what's going on, pat them down, do you feel anything, beyond that, like because maybe I would have gone as far as, oh, can you just pat them down and just do a quick like security airport pat down where it's just like bloop bloop bloop, I don't feel anything. If they want you to do more, nope.
Or pull your pockets out.
Yeah.
Pull
Like
your pockets out.
the moment anything's leaving their body, nope.
Yeah.
Same, Ash. My dad was the exact same way.
First, before we go, I want to tell Ash and Mike and Landa, as always, it is incredible that y'all are here and we love your support and we love you.
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Thank you for the giggles tonight. Also.
Yeah.
Yes. Ash always makes me giggle and Landa too.
Yep.
It's nice to have giggles on such a serious topic.
It
It
is.
is.
Definitely.
It is.
Well, ladies, thank you so much. Before we end this, do y'all want to give anybody your information, where they can find you, what you got going on?
I have an update.
Go, Hadley.
Crystal Michelle is taking over Weird Murders, Mysteries, and Mayhem.
Yeah.
And
Yay!
I'm super excited about that. We will still be, of course, there, but
Yeah.
it's going to be her herding the cats for that. I'm super excited. In addition, this week we've got some bad movies to review and all on Watching Weird, and and a special guest on Weird Awakenings. Morgana,
Yes.
you want to tell who's going to be there?
Yes, we are doing an episode on sound theory and healing, and we have got Mr. Jason Lee, and he does sound baths and sound therapy. He's actually a nurse, and I am really looking forward to it. I've actually got verification from him tonight that we're still on. It's going to be a really good one.
And
I've
we'll have
actually
that
had Reiki done by Jason, and I've been to his sound baths, and they're incredible. So
Yes,
I can't wait.
I'm going to have to come up for a weekend just so we can go sound bath together.
Yes.
Is that like the pod with the water?
No, that's something different.
Okay.
That's the
Deprivation chamber.
yes, thank you.
They
I want
do that.
one of those. I
They
think
do
that'd
that
be
at the Jackson Zen Therapy place,
Okay.
and I'd like to go to it sometime. If you ever want to go, let me know.
Okay. I'm in. Okay.
Yep. Ooh,
All right, well-
Hadley. Message from Ash.
Aw.
So be ready.
Uh,
All right.
This was so much fun.
I'm going to give y'all a real tidbit here.
Okay.
I had to turn off one of the movies from this week because I couldn't understand them. So I still have one to watch, but there was one I had to turn off because I couldn't get subtitles on it, and I did not understand what they were speaking. It was English, not mine.
That'd be a little bit difficult.
So I was like, I can't review this. I don't know what's going on. I heard like for 20 minutes the only word I understood was antibiotics.
Wow.
Yeah.
Dang.
All right, guys. Well, I'm out. Love you guys. Love you girls. And I love these wild women of weird. This is
Yes,
awesome.
absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Thank you.
Miss Finley, let us know what's coming up next.
I have to think on it.
Oh yeah.
So I will.
Totally fine.
Yeah, if y'all have any ideas out in live land, you should send them to us.
Yeah.
Yep.
absolutely.
But until next time, this is Finley Jones signing off and thanking everybody for being here tonight. Have a good night.
Bye.
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 Boston. He's saying
Boston.